Christian parents from the Isle of Wight are taking legal action against the government over a primary school's transgender policies, which they say confused their 6-year-old son after he saw a boy wearing a dress. They say their son needed to be taken out of classes. Sally and Nigel Rowe now homeschool both their sons because they say transgender guidelines issued at the son's former school confused the boys. I'm delighted to be joined now by Sally and Nigel Rowe. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you very much for having us.
We asked the Department of Education for a response, and they told us, we recognise that issues relating to gender identity can be complex and sensitive. Schools are best placed to work with parents, pupils and public services to decide what is best for individual children and what is best for all others in the school. Every now and then, what do you make of that?
Well, let's firstly remember that a school is a place where people go to, or children go to be educated, only in maths, science, and those kind of topics. Whereas the whole issue of the gender identity, this is a political issue. And the school should not be an environment where you do that. Now, we understand that obviously there are children that do suffer from gender confusion, but why should the whole school have to follow this narrative, which is simply actually not true? It's a fantasy, it's a lie. I mean, children do suffer from that, but there's no such thing as a transgender child, because children, I mean, in our case, they were 6, don't have the cognitive ability to be able to work those sort of things out. So why is it in a school? I mean, in our case, especially, this is a so-called Christian school or Church of England school. It goes totally against the biblical values that the church should be upholding.
So why have you gone to the length of suing the government? I mean, it's more than just a disagreement with your local school.
Absolutely, yes. And I think this is the thing. We know that there are thousands of parents up and down the country, and indeed teachers as well, who are concerned about this, because this is these guidelines which are being upheld by the government as best practice. We've collated over 100 pages of expert evidence now, and they say that by doing this is actually going to cause a lot of harm with children. It's not about a boy wearing a dress. This is about they're endorsing transgenderism. They're promoting it in primary school. And primary schools, and of course it causes confusion. But let children be children, we say. Protect them. As adults, we should be protecting our children, and so we have done this so that we've asked the government that they need to look at these guidelines seriously. They need to change them for the protection of all children.
It does seem a very young age to be discussing these issues. I would have thought that surely the best thing is just to encourage tolerance amongst the young. I mean, my experience of children of that age, they can be quite brutal. So, just learning to be tolerant of each other would fit the bill.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, children are wanting to be affirmed, aren't they? That's what children want. They want adults to affirm them. Now, you can teach a child to be affirmed in anything. I've said this before in the media. You can give an example of, Adolf Hitler. He indoctrinated little boys and girls to believe in his ideology. The superior race, and look what happened. And you can turn these beautiful people into monsters. He turned these children into SS monsters. Why are we doing that? With regards to children in school at the age of 4, 5, and 6. When I said earlier, they don't have the cognitive ability to make the decisions. A child doesn't go to get a tattoo, or it doesn't learn to drive, or it doesn't decide even what it wants to eat or what time he goes to bed. How is it that they seem to think that a little boy or girl can make a decision on how and change their gender? And what's more, let's face it, it's not even scientific. It's absolute nonsense. Within the genome, you have XX, XY. We have male, we have female. Now, you may feel that you feel different, but it doesn't negate the fact that you have two genders. Whereas the lefty woke are producing this nonsense that you have 100 genders. And I would challenge anybody, actually, to be able to tell me what those genders are. Nobody really knows, but there seems to be new genders coming out. It's not scientific. It's contrary to law in itself, and it's contrary to
don't you think? But don't you think you're actually being a little intolerant yourselves? I mean, I wonder what will happen if one of your own children determines that they feel persuaded to a different gender perspective.
I think this is about a case of children. Children are very impressionable. As I said before, they need to be protected. And the expert evidence, and these are people who've worked with children and gone down the medical route or gone down the psychiatric route, who are saying actually it leads to harm. So if you keep affirming all the trusted adults in your life, in a child's life, the teachers, the parents are affirming that child in the opposite gender, then they truly believe that. And then what happens? They then go, the likelihood then is that it goes down the puberty-blocker route, which then goes on to cross-sex hormones. And if you take both those, you're pretty much going to be sterilise the child, and then it goes on to surgery. So this is actually really serious.
Do you have the support of other parents from the school? Do you have the support of other parents from the school?
Yeah, well, yes, we have support from a lot of parents up and down the country and internationally. If we're honest, we know that there are parents within the school that agree with us, but a lot of them are afraid to speak out. There's a lot of silence.
There's a lot of fear.
Because there's a lot of fear about this, because it's been so heavily imposed.
If you challenge it, what will happen is generally you'll find that you'll be persecuted for basically believing in what we've always believed in as a society, that you have boys and you have girls. It's the way that the culture seems to be moving, and it's very concerning. Because going back to your question, children often role play, don't they? They want to pretend to be Spider-Man or Batman. They have these fantasies to be that, but we don't actually tell them that you really are Batman or you really are Spider-Man. You tell them the truth. You say, no, you are a boy, and you were made a boy. God made you a boy. You are a boy. And biologically, you're a boy.
And what will happen if you lose in your legal action with the government? How will you feel then?
I'd be very sad. I'd be very sad if that happens. I'm hoping and praying that. I think you'll find generally the public are fed up with this nonsense. In schools, this agenda that's being pushed, the whole LGBT agenda, to be honest with you. I think many people are saying, listen, we just want our children to go to school, so want to learn science and maths and English, things like that. I'm a gas engineer. I work in many homes, and I can generally say pretty much everybody I meet is in agreement with me. I think maybe one or two I've spoken to are not. But I would say the general consensus of the public, and I'm hoping actually the public will stand with us and say, we've got to put a stop to this. And if I may say so, I'm hoping specifically the Church of England, because they're starting to endorse this stuff. And this is a Church of England school, might I add.
We live in times of great change and fairly radical debates about issues like this. And some people may feel that you're being intolerant, but I think the fact that you have a passion for what you believe in and you're prepared to take this to debate in a higher sense is what we need. We need some clarity, don't we, in the world, so that we can sort these issues out once and for all.
Yeah, and people have asked us, this is 4 years on since we made the challenge. The reason we won't let it go, because it's a matter of conscience. And the word I'd use is conviction. I have a conviction that this must be challenged. And there's not many people who want to challenge it. And I understand why, because you will be persecuted, you will be attacked. But somebody's got to do it. And it just happens we were put in this situation with Church of England school, and hence why we've been thrust into this battle.
I think you have to accept, though, that not everybody is going to agree with you. And I'm sure that members of the other communities, there's so many different types of community now, it's hard to keep a grip on that. But it reflects the fact that people have been persecuted for feeling differently about themselves. And it's how we find a happy medium, isn't it? So that our children can be educated but not persecuted for being different. Because our difference is sometimes the most important thing.
Yes.
Yeah, we have, don't we often, this is something that people often mention, said, well, it's not very loving, is it? Not being very loving. And the Bible says, love your neighbour as yourself. Well, you know what true love does? True love tells the truth. And it tells the truth in love. True love warns people when they're doing something which is not good, it's not right. Let's remind ourselves that 4 years that the legal team have been collating evidence from these experts in various fields. And the government rejected it. And it's really quite surprising, because I think the evidence is overwhelming that this is not the right road to go down. Start affirming transgender ideology, especially. Come on, think about it. With 4 to 6 year olds. Really?
I don't think it's. I actually don't think it's transgender ideology, but I do admire your passion, and clearly you are two very dedicated parents. I wish you all the very best in your legal action. What do you make of that, Becca? Any thoughts?
I mean, I thought that was deeply sad to listen to. I think you said it perfectly. For people who are supposed to sort of practice tolerance, I thought that was an incredibly intolerant position. I don't know what reaffirming or promoting transgender ideology is. I don't think allowing children to wear dresses is doing that. And I also think, we need to correct what Nigel said, that gender dysphoria is a recognised condition. It's not made up. And there are people who conform to a non-binary identity, and we need to respect them. And teaching children about it, or allowing children who may, have gender dysphoria to explore that and understand that, is not promoting the ideology. And I think that was deeply intolerant. And I think, that their children should be in school and learning. I think being in, listening to that ideology isn't particularly healthy for them either. I found that deeply troubling to listen to, actually.
I find this a very difficult issue. I grew up in a different age. I don't even have the language to discuss this.
It's certainly, we're all learning, aren't we? And we're learning this vernacular. And, and I think the trans community is incredibly forgiving, actually, of the fact that their right to life, their right to exist, is permanently carved up for discussion and debate. And they are debased and criticised in a way that we don't tolerate of other groups. But I also think that they do allow us to kind of fumble through pronouns and get it wrong. But that was, I think, alienating the trans community in that way, is not progressive. And it's not about being woke, whatever that, not being a woke lefty. It's just about, acknowledging that this has existed forever, and we're finally at a time in society where these people have got, where we can give them the space to exist and the dignity to exist.
It'll be interesting to see what the courts decide in this case. Obviously, we don't know here what the individual circumstances are. I would absolutely reinforce, though, what Becca's just said about gender dysphoria is a clinically diagnosed, recognised condition. These national guidelines, I'm very familiar with them because I used to chair a local education authority. So the school will be providing a supportive environment to all of its children, including this particular child. And these guidelines get put together with experts, with specialists, with those in the education sector. But do you think schools feel they're under pressure to be PC in a more overt way? I don't think it's about being PC. I think it's about recognising in a child-centred education system, which is what we have here in Britain. And I think there's a legitimate debate to be had about whether a child-centred education system is the right approach. And you've got clearly here in two parents who are religious. There's nothing wrong with that. They obviously have a set of values and a set of beliefs, and we need to respect those values and beliefs. And in fact, we shouldn't forget here that they are exercising actually in our society something that parents uniquely have that other parents don't, and that's the ability to do what's called elective homeschooling. They're not happy with this particular Church of England school and what's going on, so they've taken their child out quite legally and they're homeschooling. Now, obviously, they're also suing the government to see if they can get a change to these guidelines. But I don't think it's about political correctness. It's about recognising that in a child-centred education system,
such a complex,
children
it's such a
have
complex
particular identity
issue.
issues, and gender is one of them. And I think that's different. Again, we get very confused about biological sex and biological issues from these very real issues like gender dysphoria, and that's what was disappointing. It did remind me a little bit of the debate we had in the 1980s about Section 28, when, of course,
promoting
the
homosexuality.
then Conservative government legislated against local authorities from, as they saw it, promoting, for example, gay lifestyles.
To me, it all comes down to one thing at the end of the day, and that's the word respect. I respect human beings for who they are. I don't judge them by their gender labelling or whatever else you want to say.
Yeah.
But we need to understand. We need to understand what that means, though. It's one thing. We are a tolerant country. It's one of our great qualities. But we need to understand. What that gender identity means, the journey that these people go on to get there, and to live in their own truth, which is a horrible phrase. But we need a little bit of understanding and some compassion, I think.
Fascinating. I think this is a story that's going to run and run until we eventually, hopefully, we find a point of tolerance and respect.